Hey guys, I just wanna quickly talk to you about previously requested video about what the unit overhaul is doing in RPM. So I'll just in these short videos I'll just show you like what are the changes to units in the game if you activate the unit overhaul. So today we are starting with the Vlandian tree. So in RBM, the Vlandian recruits have some very basic damaged gambeson and some basic cap. Also, then have spear and sidearm and shield, but occasionally they are also equipped with a very basic pike. So every recruit unit has something like special going on with them. That's kind of the idea here. When we go to the right, the Vlandian footman. He is again equipped with a spear and a sidearm, that might be sword or an axe, and maybe something else. Occasionally, they are also equipped with a some sort of yeah, with a simple pike. So essentially, just to kind of it's like a little bit mixed unit until you reach the actual pikeman. They're obviously a little bit they'll have a little bit heavier equipment. And Vlandians in general have slightly heavier equipment than other factions in their infantry because they don't have the javelins or throwing axes. So it's like a compensation. It's like slightly higher armor on average on their helmets or on their armor, or occasionally there might be like a better better armor, in their tier. So one of his armors was like almost 30 damage. There's a metal helmet here as well. Then the footman upgrades into infantry and light cavalry. So let's check infantry. The infantry is again equipped with sidearm and spear, but some of them, or in this case, maybe I forgot to maybe I forgot to give them a pipe. That's a possibility. Uh, but they have one-handed spears, shields, and sidearms, and again, bit heavier armor than the previous tier. Infantry then upgrades into swordsman and billman. So we'll check the swordsman now. Again, they have around 40-ish armor, but occasionally you can have individuals with more powerful armor. This is to compensate for their lack of javelins. And again, spear, sidearm, shield. So like decent formation fighting unit. And then they finally upgrade into sergeant and pikeman. So if we check sergeant, sergeant, those they have quite heavy either double mails or brigandines over mail. Essentially, all their equipment is quite heavy. Some of them have wizard helmets, some of them have open helmets, and they are equipped with long spears and sidearms, often maces, but not always. Then the other upgrade path is the pikeman. Pikeman is also heavily equipped. They have a pike and a sidearm in case they start fighting in close quarters combat, and they have shoulder strapped shields, which helps them to fight in formation and protects them from some blows coming from the front. The other upgrade part of the infantry is billmen. Billmen have only short bill equipped because like they are relatively short to hand access, so they don't need a sidearm for close quarters combat because this is a close to medium quarters combat weapon. They have relatively heavy equipment, and they upgrade into ball gears and melee cavalry. So the ball gear is a heavy unit, again like for a front line, and again they get only two hand pole arms, in this case bulge, which is like a full of short and also like long range melee weapon. They are heavily armored and they don't have throwing weapons. And the other alternative upgrade is the other the melee cavalry, which are not equipped with lances. Instead, they are equipped with spears for fighting at a relatively short range, either with infantry or other cavalry, and also with short bills or bulges. And they are experts at fighting, especially enemy cavalry when they get stuck in melee. So they are not obviously so good at charging. They are good at staying in melee and dishing it out with enemy cavalry. Other than that, they are very heavily equipped, like most of cavalry, but you need a horse to upgrade into this unit, so it's additional cost. Then the footman also in tier 2 upgrades into the designated budget cavalry line, so not a mobile line, so a light cavalry, which again is decently equipped, but the horse had a light armor. They are equipped with sidearms, swords and axes, and with long spears. So they're not a shock cavalry at this point. But they can at tier 3 they can still get the job done in terms of shock. Then there is medium cavalry, which is equipped with light lances and sidearms and shields. They are very decently equipped, and they have also they have a medium or they have a male armored horse. And finally, there is the vanguard, which is really quite heavy for a not a noble cavalry. It's equipped with regular lance, shield, and sidearm. And they actually serve as a shock cavalry. And they have the lighter variant of the helmets with the face protection, while the noble lineup have heavier variants. So the Vlandia heavily relies on their noble lineup, and essentially this lineup, like this is the really the this is the meat of their faction together with the noble cavalry we'll go over in a minute. And they also have decent infantry that can hold the line in the meantime. On the other side of the tree, we see a crossbowman, which is a support unit. They have very light armor. They have light crossbows. They can shoot relatively fast with these light crossbows. And they have very light shoulder shields so they can protect themselves a little bit while they are reloading. They upgrade obviously into crossbowmen. So Again, improvement in the armor, improvement in the power of the crossbow, and they already have the shoulder protection, so they're called deployable here. They're providing some level of protection while the reload need to have shoulder shields activated, and they're often equipped with maces and axes as their sidearms. So the Vlandian crossbowmen are decent at melee combat. Mm, At, at tier 3, they have one-handed 55, while their regular infantry have is also very good with 190, but a lot of archers have relatively lower skill at this point. So they're kind of a hybrid unit. They have decent crossbow and decent one-handed instead of being focused just on crossbow. Vlandian hardened crossbowmen are quite heavily armored units, quite relatively similar to rest of Vlandian infantry. They have powerful crossbows, sidearms, and big shields. Same applies to sharpshooters, powerful shields, powerful crossbows, and really heavy armor for a ranged unit. And they are indeed, again, a relatively hybrid unit, so they're pretty decent to both at one-handed fighting and crossbow fighting. Unlike most of archers, which are better at archery than at fighting melee. Then there is the seafarer. There are the seafarer units. In case of Vlandians, they are a type of crossbow unit, and essentially they have same offensive capability as their land counterpart, but their armor is relatively worse um, in comparison to their land counterpart because they are good at fighting on sea. So since Vlandians aren't dedicated naval faction unlike Lords, or arguably to some degree Sturgia with their territory that is split by sea. Uh, they have they have decent firepower but like less armor than their than equivalent. You know, there's a land unit, there's a sea unit. They still have decent armor, but it's kind of like one tier lower. While they still have very powerful crossbows. And then the crossbowmen at tier 2 can be side graded back into the infantry line again. This is kind of like to push the AI towards more infantry heavy armies since Vlandian crossbowmen are more of a support unit, like they can get the job done, but they're not a archery faction. They are cavalry faction with like melee units that can get the job done. At least that's the idea behind this modification. Then there is the noble line, which starts at Squire. Squire is a tier 2 unit. So, but for a tier 2, it's a really good unit. Generally speaking, noble lines in RBM have better equipment than a similar unit of same tier. If the regular, in comparison to regular units of same tier. So at tier 2, they already have almost 30 armor, for example, which is normally more normal during around tier 3. They have maces as their sidearms or sometimes swords, and they have spears and very decent helmet for a tier 2 unit. And unlike unarmored horse, so this is really effectively a scouting unit. Then there is Galant, which already has a light to medium armored horse. very decent personal armor, and by tier 3 it already has a light lance, which allows this unit to be really good at shot. And they also have high riding skills, pole arm skills, and decent one-handed skills. Yeah, knight, strength and great, better armor, face protected helmet, which is like pretty good at tier 4, and they have a medium lance, a regular lance, and a mace or a sword or a sidearm. Then we have the champions, which have very heavy helmets, very heavy armor, and maces as sidearms, and heavy lances for the charge. And then finally we have the banner knights, which have even heavier armor, even heavier helmets, and higher skill. So they are exceptional shot unit. They have heavily armored horses. They can, they're really dangerous if they can get into the flank and even frontally, unless you try to stop them with some sort of shield wall or fight wall, they can be extremely lethal. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. See you later.